What would you do if the person who gave you life looked you in the eyes in front of your entire family and called you a thief? And what if the worst part was not the accusation, but the fact that she had planned every second of your humiliation before you even walked through the front door? My name is Edna Morrison. I am 26 years old. And on Thanksgiving 2025, my mother tried to erase me in one sentence. She stood up in front of 37 people, lifted a folder into the air, and screamed that I stole $45,000 from the college fund my grandfather left for me. My father stood beside her and said nothing to stop it. My younger sister stared at me like she was looking at a stranger. A room full of cousins, aunts, uncles, church friends, neighbors, people who had known me since I was a little girl, all went silent and watched me get dragged like I was some criminal who had finally been exposed. Then my mother said she had already hired a lawyer. She called me ungrateful, greedy, and a disgrace. She said I had ruined my own future and tried to blame my family for my own bad choices. And for one horrible frozen second, I could feel the room turning against me. I could feel people believing her, but what nobody in that house knew was that 3 weeks earlier I had quietly hired a forensic accountant, and what he found was so ugly, so calculated, and so sick that by the time we got to court, the judge did not look at me like I was a thief. She looked at my mother like she was staring at a woman who had set fire to her own family and then tried to call herself the victim. If you think betrayal from strangers hurts, you have no idea what betrayal from your own mother feels like, because a stranger can steal your money, a stranger can lie on your name, a stranger can try to destroy you, but when it is your mother, she can do all of that and still expect you to call her mom. This story did not start in a courtroom. It started in my apartment on a Sunday night with an old email I was never supposed to find. October 26, 2025. I was in my Jersey City apartment doing the most boring thing possible, cleaning out my email, because my storage was full. Delete archive, delete archive, delete. I had music playing low in the background and takeout containers on the coffee table, and I remember thinking I was going to spend maybe 20 minutes cleaning things up before bed. Then I saw an email with the subject line, your education fund, important. It was from my grandfather, Walter Hayes. The date was October 2019, 6 years earlier, 2 months before he died. I clicked on it. The email was short and simple, and that is part of what made it so terrifying. Edna, I have attached the latest statement for your 529 account. As of October 2019, the balance is $118,450. This should more than cover your 4 years. Mother is custodian and will handle the distributions, but I wanted you to have this for your records. Make sure you review the statements each year. Love, Grandpa. I read it once, then again, then again. There was an attachment, but it was corrupted and would not open. It did not matter. The one thing I needed was already in the body of the email, $118,450. That number sat in my head like a siren. Because I had graduated from Stockton University in May 2024 with $85,000 in student loan debt, $85,000 for years, my mother had told me the same story over and over. College costs more than you think. The fund is running low. Inflation got worse. Your housing was expensive. Your books were expensive. Your meal plan was expensive. She always had a reason, and because she was my mother, and because I wanted peace, and because I did not want to believe anything ugly about her, I accepted those reasons one after another until debt became my normal. But that email destroyed the math. If there was over $118,000 in the account in 2019, and if that money was invested and growing, then why was I still signing loan papers in my senior year? Why was I crying in financial aid offices? Why was I lying awake at night wondering how long it would take me to climb out of debt before I even had a real career? I shut my laptop and just sat there. I did not want to think what I was thinking. I did not want to say the words out loud, even in my own head, so I did what people do when they are terrified of the answer. I looked for another explanation. I searched my inbox for every email from my grandfather about the fund. Nothing. I typed 529. Nothing. College fund. Nothing. Statement. Nothing. That one email was the only thing left. Everything else was gone. Now maybe there is an innocent explanation. For one missing message, maybe two, but when almost everything disappears, except the one thing that proves money existed, that is not random, that is a trail someone forgot to erase completely, I went to my closet and pulled down an old manila folder my grandfather had given me during freshman year. He had handed it to me with that serious, calm way he had, and said keep every school receipt, every bill, every document, do not throw anything away. At the time I thought he was just being old school. That night his voice sounded less like advice, and more like a warning. I spread everything across my kitchen table: bursar statements, loan records, financial aid notices, tuition charges, housing charges, payment confirmations, and I started doing the numbers over the next 2 hours. I built a timeline from freshman year through graduation. Total undergraduate costs, around $156,000. Student loans, taken about $85,000. Money I made from part-time work, a few thousand. Known payments from the around $67,820 based on the school records. I had it made no sense. No matter how I arranged the numbers, they would not settle into anything honest. I kept remembering specific conversations with my mother junior year, when I asked why I needed to borrow more. The fund is running low, honey. Costs went up senior year. When I pushed a little harder, are you accusing me of something after everything I have done for you? At my graduation dinner, when I asked one last time how I could have this much debt, if Grandpa had planned ahead, my father changed the subject. My sister, Natalie, looked down. My mother made me feel like a selfish child for asking, so I stopped. That is how people like her win, not just by lying, by training you to feel guilty. Every time you ask for the truth. 2 mornings later, I ordered my credit reports from all 3 bureaus. I did it because something deep in me said this was bigger than missing money. Maybe I was looking for proof. Maybe I was looking for permission to stop defending her in my own mind. When the reports arrived, I opened them expecting nothing, and found something that made my blood run cold: a Wells Fargo checking account in my name, opened October 12, 2019. Address 47 Oakwood Drive, Parsippany, New Jersey, my parents' house. I had never opened a Wells Fargo account in my life, never. I banked at Chase, and had since I turned 18 in October 2019. I was living in a dorm at Stockton, 2 hours away. There was no reason for me to be in a bank branch in Parsippany, opening a checking account tied to my parents' address. I stared at that line on the report until the screen blurred. Then I read it again and again, because once you understand what it means, you cannot go back. Someone used my name, someone used my identity, someone opened an account I did not know existed, and because of the timing, because of the address, because of everything I had just found, I knew exactly who that someone was. Still, I could not go to police with a feeling. I needed evidence, not guesses, not tears, not family drama, evidence. So for the next week, I researched forensic accountants the way some people research surgeons before life-changing operations. I read every review, checked every credential, looked for anyone who specialized in family fraud, identity theft, hidden assets. That is how I found Mitchell Brennan. His website said, if someone you trust has been stealing from you, find the evidence. I called his office on November 6th. When he got on the phone, I could barely get the words out. I think my mother may have opened a bank account in my name and taken money from a college fund my grandfather left me. There was a pause on the other end. Then he asked, how much money are we talking about? I said, I did not know exactly, maybe 30,000, maybe 50,000, maybe more. He told me to come in Saturday and bring every financial document. I had his retainer was $4,000. I had $3,200 in savings that should have been enough to stop me. It did not. I called my Aunt Denise, my father's sister. She has always been the kind of woman who says less than she knows and notices more than she says. I did not tell her everything. I just said I needed to borrow money for a legal matter, and I would explain later. She wired the difference that same day. Then she said something that chilled me because of how fast she said it. I have had questions about your mother for years. Edna, get to the bottom of this. On November 8th, I sat in Mitchell Brennan's office in Morristown with every record I had stacked on his desk. He was calm, focused, and very direct. He asked about my relationship with my mother, how she handled money, whether I had ever seen my own 529 statements, whether I had signed any withdrawal forms, whether my grandfather trusted her, whether my father asked questions when I told him my mother said I could not see the 529 statements until I turned 25. He actually stopped writing and looked me dead in the eye. That is not how those plans work, he said. Beneficiaries can view statements. There is no age rule like that. Then he said what I had not let myself fully say. That was a lie. Hearing a professional say it out loud changed something in me, because up to that moment part of me still wanted there to be a misunderstanding. But lies have a sound when they are finally named. He had me sign authorization forms so he could subpoena bank records and request the full 529 history. Then he gave me 2 instructions: tell nobody, and if your mother contacts you, act like you know nothing. He filed the requests the next day. A few days later, he called to warn me that Wells Fargo might legally notify the account holder that someone had requested records. The account holder, even hearing that phrase made my skin crawl, because in one sense it was me, but in reality it was her. I asked if I should confront her before she had time to hide things. He said absolutely not. If she knows you know, and she has anything left to cover, she will bury it before we can get to it. So I said nothing. What I did not know was that by then she had already received the letter, and once she saw it, she understood someone was looking into the account she thought had stayed buried for 6 years. I did not know that for 3 days my mother sat on that information, thinking not about confession, not about apology, not about repayment, but about strategy, and the strategy she chose was simple: attack. First, destroy me publicly before I could expose her privately. On November 19th, Mitchell called me with the first real findings. He said, "You need to sit down." I was already sitting. Then he told me that from October 2019 through November 2024, there had been 19 separate transactions from my 529 college fund into the Wells Fargo account, opened in my name. The money stayed there 2 to 5 days and then transferred into my mother's personal checking account. Total moved $89,230. None of it went to Stockton University, none. The school received only $67,820 from the fund over 6 years. Then he said something even worse, because some withdrawals were above $10,000. The plan required beneficiary authorization, which meant my signature. He had found 6 withdrawal forms with my name on them. He emailed images while we were on the phone. I opened them, and my stomach dropped. They looked like my name, but not my hand. You could see someone trying to imitate the shape without understanding the rhythm. I said, "Those are not mine." He said he was hiring a forensic document examiner immediately. Then he told me not to confront her. We needed everything fully locked down first. I agreed, but my mother was already moving. Thanksgiving was 7 days away. She invited more people than usual that year. At the time, I thought she was being sentimental. Now I know she was assembling an audience. On November 27th, the night before Thanksgiving, my sister, Natalie, called me. She sounded uneasy. She said Mom is acting weird and keeps saying she needs to address something important at dinner tomorrow. Do you know what that is about? The second she said it, my stomach turned. I told her no idea, but I knew something was wrong. Still, I went, partly because I did not want to raise suspicion, partly because I hoped maybe I was wrong, partly because no matter how bad your instincts get, there is always a tiny piece of you that wants your mother to still be your mother. I arrived at the house at 2 p.m. on Thanksgiving. Cold gray day, bare trees, cars packed along the street. The house smelled like turkey and stuffing and cinnamon, and underneath all of it, tension. My mother was moving around the kitchen, too fast, too bright, too cheerful. She kept checking her watch. She asked me to help set the extra table. She said, "Family is everything, don't you think?" There was something sharp under the sweetness my father hid in his study. Natalie looked confused. My mother's church friends were their early cousins, filled the living room and basement at 445. She called everyone into the dining room before dinner. 37 people crowded in and spilled into the doorway and hall. Then she started. She said she did not want to do this on Thanksgiving. She said her heart was broken. She said she had tried to handle it privately, then she looked straight at me and asked if I had stolen $45,000 from the college fund my grandfather left for me. I actually felt the room move. A gasp ran through it, like wind through dry leaves. Before I could answer, she cut me off and lifted a folder. She said she had bank records and dates and proof. She said she had already hired a lawyer. My father stood beside her and nodded like this was all deeply unfortunate but necessary. Natalie asked if it was true. My mother began throwing out words like drugs, gambling, lies, bad choices, ruined future. She was not just accusing me, she was painting a whole version of me for the room, and the room was taking it in. I looked around and saw people I had hugged at birthdays and graduations staring at me like I was something rotten. I said one sentence: I have never stolen anything from anyone. Then my mother made the mistake that changed everything. She said the records showed 19 transfers, 19, exactly 19. The exact number Mitchell had uncovered, a number only the person who made those transfers or traced them would know. In that moment, I realized something that somehow hurt even more than the accusation itself. This was rehearsed. She had been preparing this. She had counted the transfers, counted them, not because she was discovering them, because she had done them. I looked at her and said, if you are so sure, then let the lawyers figure it out. Then I grabbed my coat and walked out while people called after me. I heard my mother behind me telling everyone, see, she can't even face what she did. I got in my car and drove toward Jersey City, shaking so hard I could barely keep the wheel steady. I had to pull over at a rest stop and call Mitchell. I told him everything word for word. When I repeated that she said 19 transfers, he went quiet, then said, Edna, that is huge. The only way she knows that exact number is if she made them herself. She just tied herself to the transaction history. Meanwhile, my phone exploded. Texts from cousins, aunts, family, friends. How could you do this? Call me now. Your poor mother. You need help. One from my mother at 9:15 p.m. said, I am giving you one last chance to admit what you did and pay the money back, otherwise I am taking legal action. I answered, nobody, because no version of the truth would matter until the evidence was ready. December 8th, the signature analysis came back. The forensic document examiner concluded that all 6 signatures were forgeries with 99.8% certainty. He also noted something that made my skin crawl: the forger improved over time. The earlier signatures were clumsy, the later ones were more confident. That meant whoever did it practiced my name over and over. He concluded the handwriting characteristics matched my mother. Then on December 12th, I got a certified letter from her lawyer. Notice of intent to sue, 5 business days to respond. On December 18th, she filed the lawsuit: Beverly Morrison versus Edna Morrison, theft, breach of fiduciary duty, unjust enrichment, damages of $45,000 plus fees. The complaint was a fantasy. It claimed she had created a joint management account to help me after college, and that I had transferred the money without permission in 2025. It deliberately ignored everything between 2019 and 2024. That is when I hired Rachel Whitmore. I met her in Newark on December 27th. She had already read Mitchell's report before I arrived. She did not waste time with sympathy speeches or emotional buildup. She looked at me and said, your mother has made a catastrophic error. By suing you, she has given us discovery, and discovery is where lies go to die. She explained the plan: we would deny everything, countersue for fraud, identity theft, breach of fiduciary duty, demand full financial records, demand the 529 history, demand the Wells Fargo opening documents, depose my mother under oath. Her retainer was $8,500 plus more for additional forensic work. Again, I did not have enough. Again, Aunt Denise wired the money without hesitation. That alone tells you everything about who in the family had been paying attention and who had chosen not to. January 9th, 2026, Rachel filed our answer and counterclaim. January 12th, my mother and her lawyer got served with our evidence. I often wonder what that moment looked like on their side. Did her face fall when she saw the words 19 transfers? Did her lawyer ask why there was forensic signature analysis? Did he realize right then his client had not just lied to her daughter, but lied to him too a few days later. He tried to get Mitchell's report thrown out as irrelevant. The judge denied that almost immediately. If my mother was accusing me of theft, the court had every reason to examine her own handling of the money. Then discovery started, and discovery was a bloodbath. Wells Fargo produced the account opening documents from October 12, 2019. There it was in black and white: my name, my license number, a forged signature, initial, deposit $25 from Beverly Morrison's checking account, branch note saying, "Mother present for assistance." She had sat in a bank branch and opened a checking account in my name using my identity while I was away at college, and when Mitchell asked how she got my driver's license, I remembered instantly back. Then she had asked to borrow it for financial aid verification paperwork. I handed it over like any daughter would. That memory hit me so hard I had to leave the room for a minute, because there is something especially horrifying about realizing the moment someone weaponized your trust, and you had smiled while giving it to them. Then Mitchell pulled her broader financial records and the motive came into focus. Before the theft began, she was drowning over $33,000 in credit card debt across multiple cards, cash advances, missed mortgage payment, collections notices, medical bills. Then, after she gained access to my fund, the money pressure eased, while her spending rose: home refinance, BMW lease, European vacation, kitchen renovation, country club, fees. The story was suddenly clear. My grandfather did not leave her freedom, he left me protection, and she turned that protection into personal cash flow. I thought that was the worst of it. It was not. One evening, Mitchell called me and said, "There is more." I remember stepping into the hallway at work, because something in his voice told me my life was about to split again. He said, "It is not just you." She did the same thing to Natalie. My legs actually went weak. He had found another secret account, this time in my younger sister's name, opened in 2022 at the same home address, more forged signatures, more withdrawals from her 529, more transfers into my mother's control, total taken from Natalie $93,600. Natalie was in college taking out loans while believing the same lie I had believed, that the money was low, that costs were higher, that there just was not enough. My mother had stolen from both of us. The total was $182,830. That was my grandfather's legacy to his granddaughters, pulled apart and fed into lies. I wanted to tell Natalie immediately. Rachel said, "Not yet, let the evidence come out where your mother cannot spin it." That was one of the hardest things I have ever done, because my sister was walking around unaware that her future was being gutted in real time. Eventually, Natalie asked me to meet at a coffee shop near campus. She looked exhausted. She told me she had asked our mother for her 529 statement and got the same answer I had gotten years earlier: "You can't see it until you are 25. That lie again, the same lazy lie. I told her it was not true, and that she needed her own records and her own lawyer. She asked what was happening. I told her only that something was very wrong, and the truth would come out soon. She was scared and angry and torn apart, because when your mother is the problem, your whole body fights the conclusion. You keep wanting one more innocent explanation, even after all the innocent explanations are dead. By late February, we took my mother's deposition. I was not in the room for every second, but Rachel and Mitchell walked me through it in detail afterward. Rachel started simple and controlled: asked my mother to identify the account, asked when it was opened, asked whether I authorized it, asked whether there was anything in writing. Then she slid the signature card in front of her, asked if it was mine or hers. After a long silence, my mother admitted that she may have signed for me. Rachel cut through that instantly: "You forged her signature." Then came the questions about the 529 money. How much was in the fund? How much actually went to Stockton? Where did the rest go? My mother tried saying she was managing it for me. Rachel pulled up the transfer history, showing the money moving through my fake account and into her personal one. 4 hours under oath, and by the end, even her own lawyer reportedly looked exhausted. But my mother was still not done trying to break me. She launched a smear campaign. She called my workplace and suggested I had substance abuse issues and financial instability. She let rumors spread through the neighborhood. Some relatives started pressuring me to back down family. Does not do this to family. They said that sentence makes me laugh now. In the darkest possible way, because apparently in their minds, family did not mean a mother should not steal from her daughters. It meant daughters should shut up about it. My father was the hardest. Silence of all. I kept trying to get him to talk to me. He avoided me, until one day I caught him after work. I asked if he knew about the Wells Fargo account. He would not answer directly that night. He sent me a one-sentence email from his work account. Check the home refinance documents from 2021. I did not sign them, then nothing else. That sentence told me more than any confession would have. He had known enough to suspect, just not enough courage to stop it. The night before trial, my mother called me at 11 p.m. Her voice was low, controlled, almost tender, in that fake way she uses when she wants something. She said, I could still stop this. Drop your case, and I will drop mine, and we can move past it. I asked why she would want to drop her case if I had really stolen from her. She said, because you are my daughter, and I am willing to forgive you. That was the moment I finally stopped hoping for remorse. She was never going to tell the truth voluntarily. She would rather burn every bridge and drag every child she had through ash than admit what she had done. The next morning was March 15th, 2026, Morris County Courthouse. I got there early with Rachel. The marble floors, the echoing hallways, the cold morning light, everything felt unreal. By 9:15, the gallery was filling up. 24 of the people who were at Thanksgiving had shown up. That detail still sits with me. 24 people came to watch the sequel to my humiliation. My mother's supporters sat on the right, her church friends, some cousins, Uncle Philip, my father behind her on the left, were Aunt Denise, two of my friends from college, someone from work. Natalie sat in the middle alone. That image of her sitting in the middle still gets me, because that is exactly where children of parents like ours live for years, in the middle between love and evidence, between loyalty and survival, between the mother they want and the mother they actually have. My mother's lawyer opened by painting her as a loving parent, helping a struggling daughter manage money after college. Then Rachel stood and said this case was simple. A mother had spent 6 years stealing from her daughters, and then weaponized the court system to accuse one of them in hopes of hiding her own crimes. When my mother took the stand, she looked perfect. Navy dress, pearls, soft makeup, controlled sadness. She cried at the right moments, talked about sacrifice and heartbreak and motherhood. If you only listened with your emotions and not your brain, you could almost believe her. Then Rachel started. She took her through the Wells Fargo account, step by step, bank name, account number, opening date, branch location. Where was Edna on that day? At college, 2 hours away. So how did she open the account in person? Did she authorize you in writing? No. Did you sign for her? Long pause. Eventually, yes. Then Rachel moved to the 529 account. How much was in it? When I started school, around $128,000. How much actually went to Stockton? $67,820. Where did the rest go? My mother talked about management and expenses and taxes. Rachel cut through every excuse one at a time. Then she projected the full transaction history on screen. 19 withdrawals, highlighted in red, total $89,230. Each one moving from my education fund into the Wells Fargo account, opened in my name, and then into hers. The whole courtroom shifted when people saw it laid out visually, because lies can survive in conversation, they die on spreadsheets. Then the forensic document examiner testified. He explained how signatures reveal hesitation, pressure, direction, rhythm. He said all 6 signatures were forged. He said the features were consistent with my mother's handwriting, not mine. Then Mitchell Brennan took the stand and traced the money from my grandfather's account to the secret checking account to my mother's personal account. Over 6 years, calm, clinical, devastating. When my mother's lawyer tried to shake him, he just returned to the documents. The documents speak for themselves. Then it was my turn. I took the stand and told the truth. I said I never knew the Wells Fargo account existed. I never authorized it. I never signed the withdrawal forms. I graduated with $85,000 in debt because I trusted what my mother told me. Then Rachel did something that changed the entire room. She introduced the evidence involving Natalie. At first, there was confusion. Then people started understanding a second secret account, a second daughter, another set of forged signatures, another drained 529, another mountain of student debt. I looked at Natalie when the records appeared on screen, and I watched the truth hit her in real time. There are moments in life when you actually see a person's childhood ending. That was one of them. She stood up crying and asked my mother what she was looking at. My mother tried to say she could explain. Natalie said, "You told me Grandpa made a rule that I could not see my own account until I was 25. You lied to me." Then she moved from the middle of the courtroom to our side. That was when I knew the lie was truly losing oxygen. At the very end, the judge looked directly at my mother and asked the question that silenced the entire room. Are you aware that opening bank accounts in someone else's name, forging their signatures on financial documents, and diverting funds intended for their benefit into your own account constitutes identity theft, forgery, and wire fraud, not parenting, not management felonies? My mother had no real answer, only fragments about protecting us. The judge cut through it. Then she ruled in my favor on all counts. She found that my mother had failed to prove any theft by me, and that the evidence overwhelmingly demonstrated years of systematic financial fraud against both daughters. She ordered restitution to me and Natalie. She ordered payment of legal fees and forensic costs. Then she referred the matter for criminal investigation. My mother was told to surrender her passport in that moment. The performance finally ended. No speech, no tears that could fix anything, no crowd left to manipulate, just consequences. My father cried openly. People who had judged me on Thanksgiving could not look at me now. Natalie came to me and apologized through tears. I told her she did not need to apologize for being lied to by the same person who lied to me. Aunt Denise wrapped both of us in her arms. Then my father walked over and admitted in the smallest, most broken way that he had known something was wrong and had chosen not to know how wrong. That was not enough, but it was true. A week later, he filed for divorce. In April, the prosecutor filed criminal charges against my mother: identity theft, forgery, theft by deception, false reporting. She eventually accepted a plea deal: 5 years in prison, full restitution, permanent loss of her teaching license. The same woman who stood in front of 37 people and called me a thief ended up in prison because every word she threw at me was really a confession wearing my name. Some relatives apologized later, some did not. A new family group chat formed without her. Smaller, quieter, more honest Natalie. And I also pursued the 529 administrator for failing to properly verify signatures, and eventually reached a settlement that helped recover more of what was lost. Not enough to erase everything, but enough to give us air. I paid down a large chunk of my student loans. Natalie transferred to a cheaper campus and got herself back on track. My father sold the house and gave his share to us, saying it was what Grandpa would have wanted. As for my mother, she sent letters from prison. We never opened them. People sometimes ask me if I will ever forgive her. The real answer is more complicated than yes or no. Forgiveness is not the first thing. Betrayal earns truth, comes first. Distance comes first. Safety comes first. Sometimes closure is not forgiving the person who broke you. Sometimes closure is realizing they no longer get to define you. Months later, Natalie and I stood at our grandfather's grave in North Jersey on a cold, clear fall day. She placed flowers down and asked if I thought he knew what our mother was capable of. I said, I think he suspected enough to try to protect us. He just never imagined she would break every rule to reach the money. Then we stood there in silence looking at his headstone. He gave us wings for a long time. I thought my mother had stolen everything from me: money, trust, family, peace, my own name. But standing there beside my sister, I realized she had not stolen the final thing. She had not stolen the truth. She had not stolen my voice. She had not stolen the part of me that was willing to stand alone in a room full of people who doubted me and still say, no, this is not who I am. That is the part she could never reach. So, if you want the hardest truth of this whole story, here, it is: the most dangerous thief in my life was not a stranger. It was the woman who tucked me into bed as a child, the person who signed school papers, packed lunches, hugged me in public, and smiled, while emptying the future my grandfather built for me. And the hardest part was not proving she stole the money. The hardest part was accepting that the mother I kept trying to protect had never once tried to protect me. She was willing to watch me drown in debt, watch me be humiliated in front of family, watch my sister follow me into the same trap, watch all of it as long as her secret stayed safe. But secrets like that rot from the inside, and eventually, the smell reaches daylight. My name is Edna Morrison. I was called a thief by my own mother in front of my entire family. But in the end, the truth did what truth always does. It survived longer than the lie. And when the lie finally collapsed, it buried the person who built it. If this story hit you in a way you were not expecting, I want you to do something right now. Like this video, subscribe so you never miss a story like this, and drop a comment telling me one word that describes what you felt watching my mother stand up at that table and call me a thief in front of 37 people, while I already had the evidence sitting with my forensic accountant. One word, that is all I need from you. And if you have ever been accused of something you did not do, if someone in your family has tried to make you the villain to hide their own crimes, if you stayed quiet because you were afraid no one would believe you, this story is for you. The truth does not need permission, it just needs evidence and time. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. They will know exactly why you sent it.